Hi, I'm Revanth. This is part 11 of a web services video series. In this session we will discuss token based authentication in web service. Important synopsis we will discuss in this video are basic understanding of token based authentication, how to do token based authentication in web service, import System.Web.Services.Protocols.SoapHeader namespace, how to store generated token in cache. So let's begin the tutorial. If you haven't watched part 10 of this video series, I strongly recommend to watch before proceeding this video. In part 10, I have discussed authentication in web service as providing the security to web service, how to authenticate web service, importing the namespace, and using database how to authenticate the user credentials. Token based authentication. First we need to import the namespace System.Web.Services.Protocols.SoapHeader namespace. In the previous video when we watched, we have created these properties as a username and the password. In this video we additionally create authentication token as the property. In SoapHeader along with username and password we need to pass authentication token. Workflow of a token based authentication. Once the user request from the client application along with a proxy, the request goes to the web service. Once the request is processed in the web service, it returns the response. Along with the response, it generates the token and stores in the cache. That response goes to the client application. Let's look in action how to create a token based authentication in web service. Let's flip to Visual Studio. Click on File, New, Website. Select template as Visual C#. .NET Framework has 4.5 and select ASP.NET empty website. Rename the project as Token Based Authentication in Web Service. Click on OK button. Once the project is created, right click on the project, click on Add and New Item, select Web Service, rename it as Authentication Token. Click on Add button. That will create the service. Now right click on the app_code folder, click on Add and New Item, select a class file and rename it as Secured Token Web Service. Click on Add button. Now import the namespace as System.Web.Services.Protocols.SoapHeader. Now let's create properties. Create username for password, and one more is authentication. Authentication token. To consume time, I have already created methods. Let's copy and paste. Let's understand what I have written in these two methods. When we call this isUserCredentialsValid method, when we pass username and the password, we can give the database connection here in order to validate whether the username and the password are valid or not. If it is valid, it will return true, or else it will return false. For now, we will hardcode username and password to authenticate as if the username and the password is matches with admin, it will return true, or else it will return false. Let's remove this. By calling this method is user credentials valid, if SOAP header equal to null, it will return as false, or else it will check the token exists in cache or not. If it exists, it will return as true, or else it will return as false. Now let's go to authentication token.cs file. Call security token web service as SOAP header. Now call System.Web.Services.Protocols.SoapHeader, and the member is copy this SOAP header and paste here. Now when we call this method, it should authenticate the username and password, like if SOAP header equal to null, it should return the message as we will create authentication method if SOAP header dot is user credentials valid. Let's pass SOAP header SOAP header. If it is not equal, it should return this message, like please call authentication method first, or else it should return this message. Now let's create a authentication method. Let's decorate with web method attribute and this SOAP header. To consume the time, I have already written the code. Let's copy and paste the code. It is very straightforward. Let's we understand this. Let's format this properly. If soap header equal to null, it should return has a please provide username and the password. If the string is null or empty, then it should return please provide username and password. Here in this if condition, it will check whether the user credentials are valid or not. Like a soap header dot, we are calling is user credentials valid by passing username and the password. Right click on the method and click on go to definition. So it will go to this method and validate whether the user is valid or not. It will return true or false. So if the user credentials are not valid, it will return invalid username and password. Here, if the user is valid, it will create and store the authentication token before returning it to the client. When we look here, when we call this a GUID.newGUID method, it will return unique ID for this token. This token is stored in cache, like a HTTP runtime.cache, and for a time span of 30 minutes, along with the username, and which will return to the client as a token when we call this method. Now let's save the project and build the solution. So build succeeded. Now right click on this authentication token.asmx, click on view in browser. Look at that, we have two links like authentication method and the hello world method. When we click on this hello world method, it has one button. When we click on this, it says please call authentication method first. Let's go back. When we click on this authentication method, look at that, we have only button. We didn't have any text boxes to enter the username and the password. So in browser we cannot test the application. We need to create the client application by consuming this web service. Now let's flip to Visual Studio and create client application by consuming this web service. Click on File, New, Website. Select template as Visual C# and .NET Framework as 4.5. Select ASP.NET Empty Website. Rename the project as Client Consuming Token Web Service. Click on OK button. Once the project is created, right click on the project, click on Add Service Reference. We need to enter the URL of the web service which we are consuming. Before doing so, we have to run this web service. Let's copy this URL. Let's copy and paste in the client application. Click on Go button. So we have two methods like hello world and authentication method. The namespace has a service reference 1. Click on OK button. That will create the proxy in the client application. Now right click on the project, click on Add New Item. Select web form, click on Add button. Now let's create for username, let's drag and drop text box. For password, drag and drop button and one label. Here rename it as txt username and rename it as txt password. And rename the button as its text has get response, and create an event handler for this button. On click equal to create new event handler, and for label make the text as empty. Now we'll flip to this .cs file. Now create the proxy to connect to the web service. Let's create service reference 1 dot authentication token soap client equal to new service reference 1 dot authentication token soap client. Now client dot, when we call this hello world method, look at that, it needs to pass the secure token web service. For that, let's create service reference 1 dot secured token web service and username equal to text box username dot text dot trim, and for password text box password dot text dot trim. Let's pass this secured to hello world method. When we call this method client.hello world method, it returns string value as response. Let's display that in the label 1 dot text equal to client.hello world. And one more thing is let's make as secure token authentication token equal to client dot authentication method. In web service there is a authentication method. Let's make it as authentication user. Let's build the solution. Let's update this service reference. Now client dot authenticate user of secured token. Now let's create label response and make it as label token. If token value equal to if the token value equal to invalid username or password, token, else should display the token value along with hello world response. Let's run the project. Let's pass ABC as username and the password. Click on get response button. It goes to the web service and username and the password does not match with the admin. It returns false. So token equal to invalid username and password, it displays the message has invalid username or password. Let's pass username as a admin and password as admin. Click on get response. So username and the password matches, it returns true. Token value is generated. It is stored in the cache. This is the token value. So we need to pass the token value to the web service method to authenticate. Let's pass that. Let's run the project. Let's pass as admin. Click on get response. So we get the response as hello admin and the token. Let's stop debugging. So token value gets changed when we call the web service. In next video, we will discuss how to specify proxy binding in code.
Thanks for watching. For references and resources, visit these links and subscribe to my YouTube channel for email alerts. Thank you.